We're going to use today the new integrated IA tip from MST called the Allegro. It has the pre-arranged single unit, including the aspiration pipe as well as the infusion sleeve, that are all assembled into one piece that's simply rotated with a half a turn onto the handpiece here. This is unique in that we don't have to slide the sleeve onto the aspiration tip, and so the aspiration point, which is a polished silicone orifice, is already pre-placed just in front of the aspiration pipe. The pipe itself, you can see, is much smaller diameter than the sleeve, so you tend to get very nice infusion flow, and this is always going to be uniform because it's all pre-assembled. So you can easily see the pipe in relation to the tip at that point there. And I found this to be a really nice alternative to the other aspiration tips, IA tips we've used. You can see the subincisional cortex is very accessible with this tip. It behaves like the other available silicone, soft silicone tips that are extremely capsule friendly. You can polish quite easily with it. The silicone tip itself is highly polished, and so our concern for aspirating the capsule, as you see here, is much less than if it were a metal tip, which is of course much more likely to create a tear in the capsule. I'm aspirating the dispersive viscoelastic at this point, which is what I like to do to remove it and any lens particles within it before going with my cohesive agent. So this is our Provisc. Put our lens entirely in the capsular bag. And we're going to finish by moving our visco agent at this point. Actually, the tip itself, the design, the shape of it, the beveled aspect of it will, if you will, lets us get under the lens quite easily. In cases of, say, a toric lens, or we wanted to reposition or rotate a lens, we can aspirate the lens quite easily with the tip of this device, and could certainly move it around if we wanted to. The OR staff is very pleased with this configuration because they don't have to put it together and worry about where the sleeve is in relation to the tip, and all the adjustments that can be involved and then affect the integrity of the soft silicone tip and during those adjustments that are made. So it's very convenient in that regard. And this is the new MST IA tip. It's an integrated tip in that Scrub Tech does not have to apply the overlying sleeve, which makes it beautiful in that regard, because it means the sleeve in relation to the actual aspiration port are all beautifully aligned without anybody having to mess with it. There's no underlying silicone along the internal aspiration shaft to get mucked up, rolled up, and block the flow. So we get really beautiful flow here, uninterrupted flow always. And the relationship of the aspiration metallic portion is always placed just behind the mouth of the silicone, so that we have beautifully soft capsule-friendly, highly polished silicone opening that stays anterior to the metal. And as you can see, it's directed a little bit more in a 90-degree sort of relationship. So for the subincisional zone, it seems to be very friendly and sort of incisional torque-free. Many of these cases, or a lot of these cases, I'll actually just go and take the dispersive viscoelastic agent out from the overlying iris. A lot of times we'll find some fragments of these dense lenses in cases like this, right in that area. And I love the concept of the silicone tip with any of the irrigation aspiration designs, because it's so capsule friendly, particularly when you get into cases maybe somewhat like this one, but more the pseudoexfoliations where you get a very lax capsular bag and you're more likely to aspirate the bag. But you can see how easily it is to access that material just under the lip of the capsule right here. It's also, as I said, capsule friendly. We polish it quite vigorously without being overly concerned about the behavior of a metal tip, which is of course not highly polished, and when it does hit the capsule or aspirate the capsule, we can be much more concerned about tearing it. I'll also just bounce around here a little bit with this and irrigate between the iris and the capsule to make sure we don't have fragments there. You can easily polish the posterior surface of the anterior capsule with this tip where you see it. But I love this tip for its simplicity, the easy setup for my scrub, and the way it behaves inside the eye. Just going to let the lens unfold, release, and I just like to present the eyelet to me and simply bring it back into the inserter. Back in with the IA again. I can leave the tip upward here to get the anterior viscoelastic agent. This is where I'm particularly looking for remnants of dense lens fragments in cases like this. I'm going to go behind the lens in this case here with this, which is easily accomplished with this particular tip. Point at the back of the lens. There's a viscoelastic agent disappearing from behind the lens quite readily. So, and you can better see here how much free space you have for the infusion fluid to flow around the aspiration shaft and make for easily maintaining the chamber and fluid spaces in the eye while we're working. And again, latest iteration of the MST silicone sleeved IA tip with a sleeve volume that easily handles the 2-4 incision I'm using, and then the aspiration shaft that you can see has plenty of room inside the sleeve, so you're going to get incredibly nice infusion like you see here. The entire surface of the tip is rounded polished silicone. It's totally capsule friendly. You see it has a little bit more of a direct angle at where you're working, which I'll show you in a minute, can be helpful. The sleeve is integrated entirely so that the scrub tech merely tightens this little white portion onto the similar to a lure lock handle. This is the Allegro handle. It has a nice little grooved portion at the front of it here that makes it super easy to grip and manipulate while you're working with it. So we've enjoyed the durability while you're using these tips, particularly in terms of your OR team not worrying as much about tearing silicone tips that have to be put together while you're navigating. So here's the subincisional cortex, and you see I really have no problem accessing that all the way along the edge of the and there we just grabbed the capsular bag nicely, and you can see it certainly was quite friendly in that it let it go. So you can very direct direct the aspiration port quite easily with minimal torquing of the handpiece in the wound itself. Very efficient. There we go, grab the capsule again, and you can see it behaves like any silicone tip. Unlike a metal tip, which is just not going to have nearly the soft polish to it. For people who are crazed about polishing posterior or the posterior surface of the anterior capsule, it's totally doable with this as well. So I love it because it affords all the attributes of a purely silicone setup, but with guaranteed rock solid infusion. You don't get any rolling of the silicone inside the sleeve that you can sometimes get with the coated silicone tip, where you have one sleeve on top of another layer of silicone. And the relationship between the aspiration silicone portion of the aspiration tip and the metallic aspiration portion of it make it so that the capsule is not going to get back to any metallic zone. So, but undoubtedly the simplistic way of setting the thing up, it comes as a one-piece device, as you see here, that is just simply handled by the white part here, screwed onto the tip, and it's already integrated and set up and ready to go. Provisc. So I think for me, we find the cost effectiveness of such a design to be wonderful. I just like to pull the lower bar off like that and simply rotate the ring out of the pupil and into the anterior iris plane, and then just head back in with my inserter. Again, the newer version has this longer or extended manipulator, the micro manipulator part, and as you see, it comes up and away from the plate, so it makes it easier to get the ring in without a second instrument. With the denser lenses, we like to not only make sure we get all our viscoelastic, and I spend time getting the anterior viscoelastic, particularly out in the angle area where you can trap the particles of the denser lenses. Rinse a little bit around under the iris plane, under the posterior surface of the iris, rather, to make sure you don't have any pieces hanging out there. You're always, anytime you manipulate the pupil, you're always going to see a little bit of freed up pigment. I'm going to go behind the lens here. It's very easy to do this. You get a nice grip on the handle. Just point the tip up toward the IOL, and there's the rest of the viscoelastic agent disappearing easily. Lens back in the bag. Back out. I'll stop sometimes temporarily at the incision like this with the nice flow that I had out of this tip here. It actually does a little bit of hydration for me to help stabilize the chamber.